And I swear I felt like an idiot when I realized this because it sounds so simple, but as a board member, I can vouch that this is rarely happening. Becoming a good speaker didn't seem nearly as difficult as actually getting the speaking engagements. And it was kind of interesting to me throughout the years how it's been extremely simple things that have dramatically increased my chance to get better speaking opportunities. And one of the first things that I realized right at the beginning was that I was always missing the deadlines for the call for speakers. I mean, day in, day out, you get busy with your own things and you start realizing that, when you remember that you had to apply for an upcoming event, that you go to the website and you get that page that says, call for speakers are closed. And one of the biggest tips that I have that really helped me out was to start a spreadsheet, building a calendar where I was able to track all of my deadlines. And I did so by tracking the month that the event would usually occur on. So if I knew that an event happened in November, I would usually give myself 6 months in advance and find all of my events that are happening in November and start looking 6 months in advance to see when the call for speakers was coming up. And that way I was able to better track and monitor, and all I had to do was follow up with this once a month and be able to tackle all of those events that are happening on that particular month and build my list that way, also building that calendar of all of the events so that way I continuously build and keep track of all of those events that I want to participate in, whether they're in the Salesforce ecosystem or not. So having this calendar was an extremely good tool, but the next piece that was important for me was also using this very same spreadsheet to also track the abstracts that I was submitting, because I was wasting a lot of time having to fill in every single form for the call for speakers on all of these different websites. And even though every single form is different, they are often asking the same information. So one of the things that I started doing was that I would capture all of the questions that they're asking and track my answers on this spreadsheet, and I just started building a library of responses for those. So that way, whenever I started reapplying, that I could very easily just go take that information and paste it in, saving myself a lot of time. And if you're really serious about becoming a speaker, whether it's on Salesforce topics or other, then the reality of it is that it's not that far-fetched that you'll be applying for at least 10 to 12 different events per month, because there really is a lot, especially in this day and age, that you could do. So that's just something to keep in consideration. Which brings me to my next point, is that as you're documenting these fields and these answers that you're going to be submitting, you have to also track a couple of variations, which is adjusting for your audiences. You have to be very mindful. So one great example over at SoFlo Dreamin, an event that I'm on the board of, is that we have a track dedicated specifically for executives. So people that have speaking topics that are focused to that audience will automatically have a higher priority on our list because it is part of the audience that we are attracting. Now, there are many Salesforce events that cater to a general audience, your administrators, your developers. However, if you look at it, there are several events that are very specific, such as Forcelandia, that caters specifically to developers. There is also Women in Tech, Salesforce regional conference, and then again SoFlo Dreamin that does executives. So you have to be mindful of those audiences and work on tracking different versions of your speaking engagement or your submission specifically, where you can cater to the audience for that particular event. Then the next thing, and I learned a really hard lesson on this next one, was that you really want to get a chance to test your material first. So increasing your chances to get a good speaking opportunity is not a guarantee that it's going to be a success when you present. And for me, I started presenting at local user groups on my material, and one great example was this presentation that I had with regards to certifications. And being that I got most of my certifications prior to 2017, I was going in with a lot of tips and tricks that I had learned that most of the people were not that interested in. I was getting bombarded with questions with Trailhead. And I realized quickly that nowadays, in 2020, you cannot talk about getting your Salesforce certifications without somewhere in there mentioning Trailhead, something that I, at the time, had very little experience with. And for me, that experience was really useful to get a good idea of how I had to calibrate my presentation for it to become something that's valuable. And not only the presentation itself, but also the abstract. Because if you can demonstrate that you know the audience that you're catering to, then you have a much higher chance of when the board members are reviewing your presentation submission against everyone else that you will be selected. It kind of brings to my biggest point, and I swear I felt like an idiot when I realized this because it sounds so simple, but as a board member, I can vouch that this is rarely happening. And that is, have multiple submissions. Dig into your experience set within the Salesforce realm or outside of it, and come up with different speaking topics that you can have conversations on, because it'll only increase your chances of being selected as a speaker. Now, as a board member of SoFlo Dreamin, I can tell you I am not going to select the same person multiple times, but the fact that one person has submitted 4 to 5 different potential topics is really helpful for us to be able to pick and choose the one that's going to best suit our audience. And to my recollection, we have never avoided selecting someone that has submitted that many different presentations, because it's by this time you can see that it's someone that's well prepared and has a lot of good content to share. So for us, it's really been a really good learning lesson, and building this Excel spreadsheet that I've done and I recommend to you has been just phenomenally efficient in order to get better chances of increasing our speaking opportunities. If you have different tactics, or if you have a couple of tips, comments, if you have other things that perhaps we've missed, feel free to write on the comments below. Or if you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe for more stories regarding Salesforce.